This is Dolany TV, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Welcome back to another edition of Edmonton Oilers Discussion a Day, and welcome into the studio edition of Edmonton Oilers Discussion a Day. You already might have seen the car video for the weekend. It seems every weekend or every week I've at least got a car video up, and of course, that being the case, talking about Jeff Petrie potentially being reunited with the Edmonton Oilers now that it seems he may be available at $2.34 million against the salary cap this upcoming season. However, of course, today as well, we get the 9 Things article from Kurt Leavins, and that, my friends, is what I want to dig into this afternoon. Kind of number 9 on that list. What Kurt Leavins led the list off with as you scroll down. Pretty key information for us as we continue to evolve along. Who will be the PTOs at training camp for the Edmonton Oilers? We heard, and I'll have the report from earlier this week, 1 or 2 PTOs, a couple of conditions there from Bob Stauffer, and then of course we have some news from Kurt Leavins that kind of follows those same things. So friends, if you are new to the channel or returning, I have a couple things to ask you to do. If you are new, I want you to consider hitting that subscribe button here on Dolany TV. And if you are new or returning and have yet to do it, I would love if you would be able to click that bell for me. It allows you to get notified for live streams and videos if you click enable all notifications. That way you just never miss anything. And I know, let me tell you, those live streams this past year were quite special. I've said that in a couple of videos this week already, but I want you to definitely come check one out this upcoming fall, especially those preseason ones. Oh yeah. All right. Anyways, Kurt Leavins, 9 Things, August 6th, 2023, number 9. Keep an eye on the Oilers toward the end of August. Some useful players are still available out there that could fill an organizational role between the Condors and a 13th forward spot in Edmonton. That realistically is not what I'm anticipating. I anticipate a 12th forward spot in Edmonton. I would anticipate several PTOs, particularly at center. Now, Kurt Leavins, he has a pretty good track record of being close to on the money. Never fully on the money, it seems, but almost like 90-ish% of the story, he's got it a couple of weeks in advance. So keep that in mind here. 2 names that catch my eye. Oft-injured right-hand shot Nolan Patrick, 50% plus face-off man. Right-hand shot, by the way. And veteran right-hand shot Colin White. So those are the 2 guys we'll be talking about in today's video. If you're not interested in that, well, have a great rest of your afternoon. But if you are, I've got some graphics for you and stuff here coming up. But I have to kind of corroborate those reports for you at the same time with something that was said on the 2 Mutts podcast here the past days. August 4th, this one tweeted out a kind of aggregate from Oiler Alert, who we've been using a lot to kind of get the news out here on Dolany TV. On the 2 Mutts podcast, Bob Stauffer said that he thinks the Oilers will sign 1 or 2 PTOs once Bouchard is locked up. He hinted that one could be a 4th-line center who has not played for the Leafs/Flames. So you're kind of reducing those guys a little bit, quite honestly, a lot within the NHL. Guys who have not played for either of those 2 teams that would be interested in potentially taking a PTO with the Oilers. That, of course, leaves us with the guy we talked about yesterday in Sam Gagner, Nolan Patrick, who Kurt Leavins just talked about, Derek Stepan, Jonathan Toews, who, again, I know things are kind of up in the air. I think things are fully done there. P.S. Suter, who I know Patrick from the Oilers Fanatic has talked about a lot. Derek Brassard, who we once upon a time had for a playoff run, and Eric Staal. So that's what you need to know there. That's kind of what's going on for the Oilers in terms of those guys. So without further ado, let's get into talking about Nolan Patrick, because I've only got 1 graphic for Nolan Patrick, and it'll kind of explain what I'm thinking here. So when it comes down to it for Nolan Patrick, he's 24 years old. He's already missed 2 full seasons. It's concussion issues for him. He's just not had any luck over the course of his young career after being drafted 2nd overall in 2017. He's put up a grand total of 77 points in 222 games. Most recently played with the Vegas Golden Knights 2021 to 2022. And obviously I only had 25 games with them, was on LTIR this past season. And a guy who's never really shot hot at the NHL level and never really amounted to playing more than 14 minutes a night on an average season. So when I go to explain Nolan Patrick, I'll explain it to you in relative terms. Think of him last year of a guy like Jake Virtanen who came to Oilers camp on a PTO. Highly unlikely there was any success right there for both player and team. And you see how that turned out. Obviously, Jake Virtanen goes overseas and who knows what really happened after that. But that's kind of how I would see a Nolan Patrick PTO. Unfortunately, after missing 2 seasons with concussion issues and just missing all around with the health issues like that at 24 years old, the likelihood that he would be an impact player during camp enough to get a contract is so unlikely in my mind that essentially you just have him there to fill out a roster spot when you're trying to pare down the rest of the roster spots, right? You want ice 12-6 all preseason. Okay, cool. Well, now you got Nolan Patrick to allow you to do that for the first 4 games before you risk injury to Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl. That's what I kind of get going there. Is it's just one of those guys that would fill out a roster. I really do not believe that Nolan Patrick would be anything of service to the Edmonton Oilers. Again, prove me wrong, right? Just because I believe that on August 6th doesn't mean that's necessarily going to be true by September 30th. So again, I don't see the likelihood there being a success rate. Again, though, if he is a guy around at camp, there is obviously a spot within camp that he could service. So that is Nolan Patrick. We now transition to, of course, Colin White, who you need to know about a little bit as well, mentioned in that 9 Things article there from Mr. Kurt Leavins. Right-hand shot, left winger. So this is kind of the funny thing. I don't know if he was just on his off wing in Florida this past year, but ended up 6'1", 194, by the way, as well, if you're in case of height and weight. 8 goals, 7 assists, 68 games played this past year, so 15 points again, right? When you're talking about these PTO serviceable players that are available to you, they all kind of come in and fit the same profile. Colin White shot 12.5%, so even at a 10% reduction, you're probably looking 6-7 goals in a minuscule role, about probably that 68, 65 game situation for Colin White. 9 minutes and 38 seconds on ice. So again, a guy who's serviceable in limited ice time. And you could as well expect him to fill that Klim Kostin 8 to 9 to 10 minute a night role as Kostin had for the Edmonton Oilers over the course of the season as it evolved. So that's Colin White's base stats from this past year. Of course, there are some playoff stats. Oh, by the way, a Cup Finals appearance, but we're not going to worry too much about that with the Florida Panthers and all of that. I'll let you look at that while I sneeze. Bless me. But Colin White didn't really have much of an impact over the course of the playoffs in terms of point production. So there is kind of irrelevant to what we're arguing here for replacing a guy like Klim Kostin on the roster. 26-year-old Colin White from Boston, Massachusetts. He started out with the Ottawa Senators, had a career 41-point season back in 18-19, has kind of peaked at that point and gone downhill ever since. A rebound season in 22-23, obviously kind of getting up, going 15 points in 68 games, but you look at the ice time, it's drastically down in Florida compared to career averages. Career averages 1403, which is actually above 15 it would look like, would he have not have played 9 minutes and 38 seconds average ice time in Florida this past year. I'm not going to claim to know what was going on with Colin White for 68 games in Florida, because you know how many Florida games I watched? About 2.5 periods out of the 2 games that the Oilers played Florida this season. So that's where I'll just kind of leave my 2 cents aside. But that's Colin White for you, as well, a guy that would be serviceable. I think a guy that would have a much better chance of making the team than a guy who's just missed a full season, a guy who has missed 2 years out of the past 3 in Nolan Patrick. And obviously, too, we'll talk as things go along and keeps being reported, those other PTO targets that appear to be out there on the market. But friends, thank you so much for tuning in this afternoon. I'm Tyson, this is Stolany TV. Appreciate you being along for the ride. Like I said, if you haven't already hit that subscribe button or click that bell, that would be greatly appreciated. And with that, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. We got one more day to go in this long weekend here in August. I am up on out of here.